Welcome to the Wooper Club Season 10, Week 6 Power Rankings, right on time as always. I am IllLogic, coach of the Buffalo Bouffalant, and as always I am joined by SteveChuck, coach of the Waterdeep Wobbuffets.
Hey everybody.
And we're going to dive right into Week 6. This is the three-quarters way point, and we actually have quite a big shakeup here. There is one coach completely removed from there who is at number 2. We do have a new coach up there, and that is Steve's Wobbuffets, leapfrogging quite a few coaches here. We did mention the last one that Steve at 5 was just waiting for someone to slip up, and wouldn't you know it, everyone between him and the number 2 spot took a big loss this past week. And actually, this also means that of these top 4 coaches, we only have 2 battles to go over, so we're going to hop right away. Steve, I love you talking about me winning, but sometimes the streak has to end, and you're going to have to tell us about how the Noctowls continue to remain undefeated, up at number 1, at 6-0 here, as they defeated the Bouffalant.
Yeah. So the Noctowls, they brought a team of Raichu Alola, Pincurchin, Mudsdale, Aromatisse, Noivern, and Decidueye against your team of Aerodactyl, Steelix, Mesprit, Rotom Frost, Guzzlord, and Marowak, and the Noctowls were able to come away with the 1-0 victory. In the first couple of turns, I would say the battle was leaning in the Bouffalant's favor, able to get a big damage up on the Pincurchin without suffering a Scald Burn, as well as being able to Toxic the Mudsdale. However, later pivoting proved those early efforts not so fruitile. The Aromatisse was able to cure the Mudsdale of the poison, however, it did shortly after get repoisoned, but kind of limited the long-term effects of some of these items. Throughout the early pivoting of the game, a big difference was the hazards. The Noctowls were able to pretty consistently get and keep up rocks, getting that constant chip damage against the Bouffalant, who were unable to do the same. And then the first big break in the game comes in the Noctowls' favor. Noivern clicking Draco Meteor against Marowak and securing the one-hit KO. The hero of Week 5, Marowak, going down without doing anything this week, and Noivern claiming another KO. Additionally, the Noctowls kept Noivern in on the revenge-killing Scarfed Rotom Frost. However, they weren't punished for it. Expecting a switch, the Bouffalant went for a Volt Switch, and Noivern just stayed in and launched off another half-powered Draco Meteor. But that could have been a big swing there, picking up the Noivern with a Blizzard. A couple more turns of pivoting later. The Noctowls got probably the biggest, most influential play for them was the Noivern Flamethrower burning Steelix. And in return, the Steelix's Heavy Slam not KOing the Noivern that turn. Huge break. Steelix kind of being a key centerpiece for the Bouffalant's team. And with its damage output halved, huge favor to the Noctowls. Pincurchin was able to heal up that earlier damage in on Steelix, getting a recover on a Protect, able to kind of get the health he would need for the end game, take the hits he needed to while keeping the terrain up in favor of the Noctowls. Next big KO for the Bouffalant, Guzzlord able to come in, pick up a KO with knockoff. However, with Noivern still alive due to the Steelix burn, Noivern's able to easily come in and threaten a revenge on Guzzlord, forcing it out. Guzzlord was able to come back in later and pick up 2 more KOs, but in doing so, Electric Terrain got set up and Raichu was ready to sweep. Or it tried to. Was able to remove Guzzlord, but then the Focus Blast missed after taking a Sucker Punch from the Scarf Rotom Frost and had to make an early exit from the battle. Didn't get KO'd, but had to retreat as it was no longer in a winnable position. Raichu was able to come back in on a refresh terrain against Aerodactyl, picking up that KO. And then between the efforts of Raichu more or less just dying, and then the Decidueye in the back KOing the Rotom Frost and securing the 1-0 victory. Well played from both coaches. As always, some RNG going in different ways that definitely impacted the match. Both teams, made some predictions, some paying off, some not. Nate, you have any other thoughts on this battle?
Yeah, I definitely wanted to make sure I was pressuring that Aromatisse often. That kind of excuses a little bit the wind up going for the Volt Switch on Noivern on the revenge turn. I definitely wanted to make sure Aromatisse could not continue to heal up something like that Mudsdale. Figured once the Mudsdale was gone, it would free up Steelix quite a bit. It would just free up the Volt Switch quite a bit. But honestly, the Noctowls made a couple of honestly great plays. Other one that stands out is doubling out into the Decidueye early game against the Mesprit. Whatever he knew that I would probably have to go into something to resist the incoming body press that I had scouted with Protect. Did a great job playing around Protect multiple times, as well as the terrain game as well. I think we both kind of knew once Pincurchin went down that Raichu would just come in and claim a couple KOs, so it was definitely a kind of a delicate balance there, trying to make sure that, for me, the terrain could go up without doing too much damage, and the Noctowls ended up playing it well, where he's able to pick a sack once or twice in order to make sure the terrain could get up and then get Raichu in just a little bit after. It was awesomely played from both sides. Unfortunate calc early with the Specs Noivern. I could, of course, go into that a little bit more, but if you really want that extra detail, you can go check out my channel in the video. Shameless plug right there, but really good game to what is quickly becoming probably the best coach in the league. Undefeated still after 6 weeks, and another big win for the Noctowls, and that's why he is up at number 1. Now, the other match we do have to talk about is, of course, Steve moving up to the number 2 slot, and he did so by defeating the former number 2 coach here with the Route 1 Burbs. So we have to go over this match here. Steve brought a team of Chandelure, Sharpedo, Escavalier, Piloswine, Virizion, and Licky against the Route 1 Burbs, bringing Gallade, Charizard, Lycanroc, Raichu, Vaporeon, and Flygon. As we can see, the Wobbuffets came away with a clutch 4-0 victory. Several teams within the top have played each other, but this is definitely the largest differential we've seen between these top 4 coaches, that 4-0 there. Just about every other time it's been about 1-0. So what happened to help that occur? Turn 1, very interesting. Raichu lead against the Piloswine, trying to go for that Focus Punch. Been inspired by a couple of others of us using that Focus Punch, trying to get that big damage in on Piloswine. Steve not falling for it, not setting up the Turn 1 rocks, and causing the Focus Punch to fail, which was super unfortunate. Would have been very funny to see. Another interesting set we saw was another physical set, the Dragon Dance Charizard, which did not quite work out, as Steve had the clutch coverage of Rock Slide on Licky to help it eat up a hit as well. So the +1 Flare Blitz not only did not KO the Licky but also KO'd itself in return. That was a huge threat that could have gone out of control had Steve not carried the appropriate coverage and played that quite well, quite properly. We also saw a couple of really nice Scald Burns from the Vaporeon, getting a little bit lucky early with a couple of nice Scald Burns. That one of them was healed up by the Heal Bell, and another one later by the Rust from Escavalier, so they didn't make too much of an impact. The one that probably could have helped would have been if it had come against the Virizion that had switched in. Unfortunately for the Burbs, that did not occur. Really nice pickup as well, the Taunt Virizion for the Flygon, kind of anticipating a potentially defensive Flygon set, and called that out appropriately with a really good taunt on the Roost, forcing Flygon to not be able to recover up. A couple turns later, we're able to get to the Escavalier, who has been resting off lots of damage, went down to 2% at one point, was able to rest up off of that. And just swapping into the physical Raichu set, we saw Raichu go down to a combination of Rocky Helmet and Life Orb, which then set up the critical turn. We saw the Lycanroc come in and get 2 straight turns to Swords Dance up while the Escavalier was resting. And on the turn that it would wake up, of course, the +4 Fire Fang misses the Escavalier, gets knocked down to Focus Sash next. Steve made a really nice switch into Licky to sack that, and then Ice Shard to pick up the KO on the Lycanroc, but wow, could that have really swung the game into a different direction. I know the coaches talked about it a little bit later. We know that we saw the Rocky Helmet on the Escavalier, so even if that had ended up going down, it would have at least been able to take out the Focus Sash from the Lycanroc, and Steve had a couple different options between something like Ice Shard and the Aqua Jet from the Sharpedo, assuming that he remembered that Accelerock was a thing. So potentially game-breaking, but also potentially could have just saved some differential. Either way, it was a very impactful turn for how the rest of the game played out, which honestly from there, everything was pretty chipped there, so it allowed Chandelure to come in, finally finish off a couple of really nice kills, take down the Vaporeon with a couple of energy balls. Cool to see that thing put in some work before making a safe switch into Virizion to take out the Gallade at the end of the game. Sharpedo did not even need to come in, Steve. That was pretty impressive, being able to dismantle this team. A couple of wonky sets we talked a little bit about, and of course a little bit of luck in your direction despite a couple of Scald Burns against you. Anything else that you would like to talk about this match and your 4-0 victory over against a very good coach?
I mean, yeah, you covered it pretty well, especially, the critical 95% Fire Fang miss. That happens sometimes, and we have kind of talked about it. And between Aqua Jet at Sharpedo and the Ice Shard on Pilot One and the Rocky Helmet, definitely wouldn't have ended the game, but would have made it a lot closer. But all in all, it was. I felt ready for the team, and it was good to finally get a win over someone else in the top 4, and kind of cement my place up top there.
Absolutely, and we definitely do see that Shane Delore would have put in quite a bit of work at the end of the game too, had the Lycanroc been able to be taken care of. So really well played overall. Now it seems like the onus is on the Burbs to get a win in the top there too. We've kind of cemented ourselves maybe as a little bit of a top 3 here. We'll talk about that a little bit later when we look at some of the differentials, but it may be the Burbs now who need to get a win against one of the top coaches to remain up there in contention. Speaking of remaining in contention, we do have a couple of teams that we do need to look out for, and that would be the Psyducks, who just dropped from the top 4 after spending the entire season up there, as well as a coach we haven't talked about much at all, the Akron Agrons, making an appearance back on the teams to watch list for the first time in several weeks. These two coaches actually played as well this past week, with the Agrons claiming a 6-0 victory against the Psyducks. The Psyducks falling to 4-2, same as the other 3 coaches from the 2 through 4 spots, but with 2 straight 6-0 losses, their differential has started to tank, and they seem to be going in the wrong direction. As for the Agrons, another nice little sweep, one time by Slurpuff, and this one at the hands of Sandslash. Steve, the Agrons are usually on the receiving side of being swept. What do you see coming from this coach as they're starting to rise, and what are you seeing from the Psyducks? They start to fall a little bit.
On the side of the Agrons, he's really starting to be able to make a use of his couple of his pieces. You mentioned last week Slurpuff putting in work. Finally doing something. It's been the joke. Slurpuff was the number 1 overall pick and really hadn't done much. So nice to finally get it to do something. And then this week, one of the lower tier mons, Sandslash, something that was picked up kind of as a rock resistant spinner. But, behind getting a spin, able to get that speed boost, get a Sword Stance for an attack boost. And with the combination of the two, the Psyducks team really didn't have anything to deal with it and was able to pick apart the team when it was given the opportunity. On the end of the Psyducks, I don't know if maybe just the league has started to figure out their team. They've been relying on a couple key pieces, and it's possible the league in general is starting to figure it out. It's also possible that, a lot of the early wins that have given them a lot of credit, we aren't valuing as much anymore. They were facing some teams that we thought to be good that really haven't done so well this season. I know we always bring up the close win they had over the Route 1 Burbs that came at the hand of a Stone Edge miss on the side of the Burbs. So that's no longer really holding them up with the Burbs fall. It just seems that every team that the Psyducks have beat is on a downward trend, and so they're following.
Yeah, and kind of going off that too, they are a 4-2 team, and the other 3 that we have above them are ordered: the Wobbuffets, and then the Bouffalant, and then the Burbs, with the Psyducks at the bottom. This pretty much follows the differential that all 4 of these teams are carrying. But would you be able to go a little bit into detail why we decided to bump the Wobbuffets up that many places? I know all 3 of the other coaches just lost, but you have a couple of very good wins suddenly in your hands, and perhaps the Burps and the Psyducks' recent losses here bumped them down. Go a little bit into why we decided to order them the way that we did.
Yeah, for the Wobbuffets, I know kind of what was really holding back my ability to rank myself highly was I didn't have any wins against other good teams. I had a lot of dominant wins over teams towards the bottom of the league and very narrow losses to other top teams. But finally getting a big win over a top team kind of propelled me up. Well, of course, everyone else that was in the top 4 before, besides the number 1 loss, that certainly helped. For the Bouffalant, having losses to just the number 1 team, and then, of course, that bad loss to the Close Combat Club that kind of comes out of nowhere. But besides those 2, strong performance, the Burbs having losses to now the Wobbuffets and then the RNG loss. Again, they really haven't had a marquee win, as mentioned earlier, so they're kind of slipping, but, hopefully in the coming weeks they can get that marquee win to really cement themselves in the top 4. So, yeah.
Yeah, and with the Psyducks sliding down, that seemed like a relatively easy call for us. to make it the kind of the order with only 2 weeks left. Not too much more time to get yourself into the top 4. Speaking of which, we have one little clinching scenario we do need to talk about. We mentioned all these teams at 4-2, but perhaps we haven't given enough credit to the Noctowls for remaining undefeated to this point. So real quickly going over what needs to happen for that number 1 seed. The Noctowls are 6-0 at plus 18. That means at worst they can go 6-2, and that means the only of the other 4 coaches, 4-2, could possibly tie them. So it really comes down to a differential where they're in the worst case scenario of the Noctowls losing to and any of the other coaches winning to. We see obviously the Wobbuffets are in the best position there. The Noctowls at plus 18, Wobbuffets just below them at plus 16, Bouffalant plus 13, and the Burbs and Psyducks hanging back just a little bit below that at plus 3, so it would take quite a bit for that to occur. In the end, it's real easy for the Noctowls. One more win, and they do clinch the number 1 seed, which is coming more and more likely to happen. Steve, the Noctowls, 1 loss on the regular season in the last 2 seasons. Isn't that impressive?
Yeah. Jimmy's showed up. He played a couple of earlier seasons, but now that he's playing regularly with us and is very involved, we're starting to see his dominance, and he's certainly putting in the work, and as a result, we're seeing the results. Strong contender, and we'll see how the rest of the season plays out, but I think it's possible he may dethrone you as the number 1 seed in the upcoming seasons.
Let's definitely hope not, though. If we do look at this, he does have wins against 3 of these 4 coaches, and he plays the Burbs in week 8. So potentially a clean sweep against every other top contender makes it all the more impressive. Noctowl's really emerging. Let's hope that my early time success can carry me to continuing on that number 1 seed throne. But it may require beating up the Noctowls again in the playoffs. We'll see if we even get the opportunity, because there are some other very good teams. And the last thing we do need to talk about, because this was the cutoff for transactions, the Route 1 Burbs made just one small transaction, trading out the Tier 20 Swoobat that they so desperately wanted to use but could not make an appearance with in Week 5. And they're actually trading it out for Amara, trying to get up a little bit of that Hail core there. We've seen the Burbs use Charizard quite a bit, actually quite a bit with Sun as well, but the Alolan Sandslash has been successful when it's come. Now he's trying to add in that little bit of Slush Rush and potentially a little bit of interesting way to get some bulk, maybe even some Aurora Veil going on there. What do you think about the Amara coming in for Swoobat?
I definitely like the pickup. I think it does a lot more for the team than Swoobat. You mentioned its ability to set Hail, and that kind of gives the Burbs 3 different weathers teams kind of have to prepare for. We've seen Chuckle set Sandstorm for Lycanroc with Sand Rush. We've, of course, seen many team members set Sunny Day for Charizard to break through things. And now we have an auto setter of Hail for the Sandslash Alola to get that speed boost and sweep things. 3 different weathers with different Pokemon you need to prepare for. All sorts of interesting things that, he took the mini weather packets to the extreme. And it's been working out for him so far, and we'll see if they continue to.
Kind of interesting, we saw 0 weather setters drafted, mostly because we banned quite a few of them, and then with transactions we saw the Abomasnow and now the Amara both picked up in the late end part of the season. We'll see if teams can adapt to those Hail cores suddenly coming around. That's going to do it for Week 6. We do have some very good Week 7 matches we do need to look forward to. At the top there, the Bouffalant and the Psyducks. This is the Psyducks' best opportunity they're going to have in order to get back into the top 4 and potentially another strong win for the Bouffalant to maybe even start to threaten the Wobbuffets up there at number 2, who also do have to contend with the Agrons, who are trying to muscle their way back up to the top as well. Steamrollers trying to get their name on the board as well against the Incineroar. Close Combat Club trying to do so as well against the Mighty Miltanks. Burbs trying to get a good win over the Castforms, keep them in contention, as well as the Noctowls and Oricorios in a battle of Burbs. Any one of these stand out to you in particular, Steve?
My match kind of stands out to me. The Agrons, of course, rising on a bit of a winning streak right now. I know, historically, I've pretty sure always been able to beat Joey, but we'll see. He's having an unusual season. Where he's not doing well in the regular season, but we'll see once he gets to the playoffs if he's hot. But I'm gonna do my part and try and shut that down ASAP.
We've seen a couple of times, most recently I believe in Season 6, we've seen some coaches go on some bad losing streaks to start the season, only to end up winning out at the end and then making the semi or even finals just with a large winning streak in the second half of the season. We'll see if Joey is going to be on that run or if your streak and rise to the top will continue. So that's going to do it from us for Week 6. We only have 2 weeks left. Definitely join us next time to see what kinds of interesting developments may have occurred, and we'll definitely be going over a lot more playoff scenarios once we get to Week 7. See you then.